Welcome to the Be Your Soul podcast. I'm your host, Sky Bradshaw, and today we're exploring something that shapes every inner journey: the stories we tell ourselves, both the ones that ground us in truth and the ones that quietly pull us away from it. In this episode, Seeing Through the Narrative, the quiet truth beneath the mind's story, we reflect on the mental loops, inherited scripts, and quiet inner critics that often speak louder than our soul. What happens when we start to notice the narrative and choose to listen deeper? In our Skylight segment, I'll be joined by Audrey Muck, the producer of this very podcast, a gifted communicator and someone who understands story as both a tool for healing and a practice in presence. Together, we'll explore how to recognize the inner narratives that serve us and release the ones that don't. We hope this conversation invites you to gently pause, tune in, and consider. What story are you living inside today? And is it still true? But before we dive into the Unclouded Hearts segment for spiritual messages of wisdom, let's invite ourselves to become present in this moment within our body, mind, and energy. Take a moment to invite yourself to take some deep and cleansing breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. In through your nose and out through your mouth. And as you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, invite your mind, body, and energy to relax, 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 relax. Relax, 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 relax. Relax, 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 relax. And as we move into this space of complete relaxation, we open up our energies to the ancestors, loved ones, and friends to come together today to heal and guide us and lift us to the highest version of ourselves in the light of the universe, so we may hear what we need to hear, know what we need to know, connect how we need to connect, and be what we need to be for our highest and best good and the highest and best good of all involved, as we open up space to give and receive. Seeing through the narrative, the quiet truth beneath the mind's story. We are surrounded by stories, loud ones, polished ones, repeated so often that they begin to feel like truth. The world hands them to us constantly: what to value, how to behave, who to be. And in a time when we're constantly scrolling, comparing, and absorbing through headlines, highlight reels, and fear-based noise, it becomes even harder to tell what's real. But not every story we hear is true. Not every narrative we absorb belongs to us. And part of healing, part of becoming, is learning how to tell the difference. That takes discernment. It takes presence. That takes bravery and heart. This episode is an invitation to pause and notice the stories playing in the background of your life. Are they rooted in fear or freedom? Are they expanding you, or are they keeping you small? Are they yours, or are they someone else's version of who you're supposed to be? Some narratives come from love, some from spirit, some from deep remembering. Others come from wounds, survival, and outdated definitions of safety. Many are sold to us wrapped in urgency or perfectionism. But just because something is loud doesn't mean it's true. It's brave work to look at your stories honestly. It's sacred work to let some of them go. And when you do, it makes space for something new, a fresh lens, a deeper breath, a story that honors the truth of where you are and who you're becoming. Let your heart be the place where truth lands first, not the fear in your head, not the noise of the world, but that quiet knowing beneath it. You are allowed to release the voices that never spoke to your soul. You're allowed to trust the whisper that does. Because the real you has never been lost, just clouded by stories that were never yours. And when the noise clears, when the dust settles, the unclouded heart will remind you your truth matters. You are already enough. You are already whole. And from that place of remembering, of the soul self, you can begin again with truth as your compass and love as your guide.
This episode of Be Your Soul is brought to you by Tarot by Sky, your home away from home for intuitive tarot, energy healing, and spiritual growth. Whether you're seeking clarity through a tarot reading, deep healing with an energy session, or powerful tools to align your energy, Sky Bradshaw offers a range of services designed to support your journey. Looking to deepen your spiritual practice? Sky's classes and courses help you tap into your intuition, understand your energetic boundaries, and manifest with purpose. Plus, with exclusive packages and subscriptions, you can receive ongoing guidance whenever you need it. Step into your power with Tarot by Sky, because it's your future. Visit Tarot by Sky to book a session, explore offerings, and start your journey toward alignment today.
In this episode, I'm joined by Audrey Muck. Audrey is an award-winning media producer with decades of experience in news, radio, and multimedia storytelling. From her early days as a public radio news director and host of All Things Considered, to producing nationally syndicated programs like Nuremberg Revisited and her documentary about women's rights advocates in South Carolina, Brazen Bells. The women in that program galvanized Audrey's own advocacy for equal rights, and she is currently the co-president of the Equal Rights Amendment North Carolina Alliance. Audrey has brought clarity, depth, and heart to every story she's helped shape. Today, she lends her talents to podcast production, video editing, and creative project management, including her role as producer of Be Your Soul. I am so honored today to welcome the heart and rhythm behind this show, our very own producer, Audrey Muck, someone who understands the power of story, not just as a tool for communication, but as a doorway to the soul. Audrey, thank you so much for being on the show. I know coming in front of the microphone instead of monitoring behind can feel a little awkward, but you are just such a dear soul and such a power force behind the podcast that I know that the listeners want to hear from you.
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me, Sky.
Of course, of course. So we're going to talk about, the stories we tell ourselves. And, you've been in communication and storytelling for your whole career and seen both sides of it because, at points there is the documentarian version that says how do I reveal and expose the story and the truth and pull and allow it to be seen without molding it too much, just letting it be natural and organic. And then, there is the advocate in you, the, person who is working advocacy that, especially in the current climates we're in, is about the same thing on the different side, like unpeeling the layers of story that people are being fed in order to reveal that truth so they can use their own discernment and their own knowledge and understanding past that controlled narrative or that force-fed narrative for the truth to rise up. So it takes a certain kind of bravery and spiritual savvy, I think, to hear a story and then pause long enough to say, is this true for me? Does this still belong in my life? Is it, Is it relevant to the me of now? And to name what's true. And so, can you speak to the power of that moment and the moment we choose to question the story and how it opens up space?
I think that pause to really consider is so important, right? Being in news, you don't like leave yourself outside the studio door, right? So you're there with all your experiences and your understandings, and being willing to take the pause and ask the questions is so important. To be able to just say, well, wait a minute, does that make sense? Does it make sense to me? Does it make sense to what I know? Does it make sense to what I've experienced, to what I've heard from other sources? Does it all jive as true? Just over time, learning to really parse things out. So a long time ago in the advocacy space, I was at a big meeting and someone just said the line, "Don't should on me." And that was just like a game changer for me, right? Every time I hear that word should, it just sends off like alarms in my head. It's like, I should do what?
Right.
Is that real? I don't know. So, I mean, we get all these messages, like you said, from our families, from our culture, and they're all telling us what we should be, who we should be, what we should do, and it's not always right. For me, it was to be the good girl, right?
Right.
And so always, taking that perfectionist route, trying to make everything perfect. Now that was a tough one to unlearn.
Right. I remember I remember this moment so distinctly in my life. And it was one of the deepest times where I had to dismantle a narrative or a belief that wasn't true within me. And I was talking to Sally Ann, my spiritual mama, and I was saying, like, I just expect something. I was talking about a relationship and I expected reciprocation in the relationship. If I was being kind, I expected kindness back, like sort of. And she said, expectations always lead to disappointment. And I was like, what? I was like so upset with that. It was like the first time that I felt like I wasn't on the same page with her. And I was like, what? No, like in my head, I was revolting. And it was like, I could feel the physical, like, no way, like in my body. And then I decided to sit with it. I decided to pause and like reflect on the concept of the expectation always leads to disappointment. And I'm like, oh, well, what does that mean? Like, not the base off with your head mentality that I had of like, what I went deeper and I was like, oh, well, wait, like, what does that exactly mean? Like, what is expectation? What is disappointment? What are all of those things? And is that actually true to me? And I realized I had such a visceral reaction because it was so woven into my belief in a false way that it was like pulling molars out to get rid of it. It was difficult. It was a long 6 months of like inner. And then I realized when I got to the end of it, which was like, oh, expectation is such a closed and control sort of way of thinking about something. I can look at intention. Intention means this is what I would like, but expectation is like, this is this is what I should receive. And it was a process to get there with something very simple, but very complex. And so, that should story resonates with me because it was like, what?
It's been fun over the course of my career and, working in podcasting now, which is just fun because it's all storytelling, right? So people are sharing their experiences and to be able to hear so many different sides of things, right? So I had a news director. She was funny. She got really frustrated with me at one point when I was, kind of managing the news team. And she would tell me, okay, well, this thing is happening. And I would take a pause and I would be thinking about, who should I send out? What other voices do I need? Whose voice typically wouldn't be heard in this situation, and how do we get them on tape, right? And so she would get frustrated with me because I didn't like immediately jump and run on the story. And finally, it was probably like a year of working together. She said, "Oh, I get it. You're thinking." But that, it's just getting back to the pause. It's like, okay, so this is a big story. How do I tell this story, and how do I get all the different viewpoints in? And I think, having all those different viewpoints has really helped me a lot just in my worldview and being more open and questioning about other people's motives and things, right? So I had a different news director back in South Carolina who sent me, the more liberal of his two news co-hosts, to Houston for the Republican National Convention, and my co-host, the more conservative of us, to the Democratic National Conference, right?
Wow.
And it was really great to spend time with all these Republicans and really understanding where they came from. I mean, it was a long time ago, and so I think I'm having a tougher time right now just with the current atmosphere that feels awfully cruel and performative, to get back in that headspace. But I'm always questioning, well, why do you think that way?
Right.
How did you get to that point where you feel that way about other people? So it's an interesting position we're in at the moment.
It's true. And that process of unlearning or at least gentle empathy, and also allowing that gentle empathy to allow us to question and discern, what would you say is a tool, a technique, a power moment for you that allowed you to be able to tune into that empathetic listening, and also know that not only can you be shifted somewhat, obviously, like you said, in current environments, shifting can be harder because of the harshness of things. But what's your experience in understanding, like, oh, I thought this when I went into that project, and now it's this, or it took a turn, or it's not what, I was being told, or what I was being, fed on it. And what's a tool that you think is really powerful for people to use in that moment?
I used to cover politics a lot, so I'm a total political wonk here. and it's really difficult for me to not be paying attention, even as much as I would like to take a complete news break from time to time. And that is stopping to ask who benefits. So if there's this policy that seems unusual or out of left field, right? It's like, who benefits from that? Why is this what's being pushed? It's again coming back to the pause to kind of see the gestalt of things. It's like, why are they doing this?
Yeah.
What's the motivation?
And that's how humans function, is under motivation. So it's a strong place to be able to me, it's like the thread in the sweater. If you can find the motivation and keep pulling, then you can navigate, how it unravels, or where the knots are, whichever the two may be. But I think if you just take it, not to discount face value, it's our first impression, but I think, right now we just need to really, well, always as humans, we need to go beyond the face value, behind that, what we're being shown or told, or, if I see something that's interesting to me on any news source, one of the keys that I do is I go to the local news station. I go to, if I see a national story and it happened in Minnesota, in a city in Minnesota, I find the local news source in that city in Minnesota and see what they're saying about it. And to me, that helps me kind of understand a little bit more, or get, deeper. And then if there's a way to do deeper research, I will. But to me, that's like an easy thread. Well, yeah, that's the outside story. What's the inside story? And how do I hear both and see what, how those things change?
That's fabulous that you do that. That's a really great practice, because the national media doesn't have the same kind of time and space and background that the local media does. And so if you're looking at national, you're getting the headlines and just, the briefest little bit about it. But the local news station is living in that community. And so it has much more impact to them. So they're going to tell you more about what's going on.
And also, it's that same motivator, like the motivation of the national news compared to the local news is very different than, what their stake is, what they feel about it, all of those things. What do you think it takes to look at a narrative with clear eyes and reclaim our personal right to tell it differently? Like, what do you think it takes for us to get out of that kind of, I see the cartoon with the buzzy eyes, like the circular, like hypnotized, or like what takes us out of that hypnotized, just going along to get along, eating what we're fed version to shifting inward to say, like, I can see this differently. I can tell this differently. I can be brave enough to not just take what I'm being fed, but to make a different choice.
Wow, this is such an important question in the era of AI. It's changing so much, and the narratives are so often completely false, right? So I think everyone just really needs to kind of develop a prove it mindset. Prove it to me. It takes more work. It takes work to go to that local news station and really seek out what's going on behind the headlines. It takes that moment to, just kind of do a gut check also. It's like, does this sound right? Or does this sound like someone, in the case of like he says, she says kind of stuff, or a better way to put it is, like triangulation, when someone's telling you about someone else, right? It's like, does that really sound like something my other friend would do? And it takes work. You just have to make that choice that you want to get to the bottom of things, and then to take the time to do the work. One of the things people need to do is really diversify your news source. Sorry if this is getting too political.
No, you're okay. You're okay.
Podcast, right?
I knew this was. I invited you on knowing this is part of your passion. No worries.
So we've got, these silos of news that are really just feeding people more of what kind of worldview they already have. It's happening on the left, it's happening on the right. And people just need to diversify their news menu. So some of those mainstream media kind of places, as well as a little of this and a little of that. Social media is notorious. So, be careful how much of that you consume. Right. And it's also, social media is more likely to get your emotions up, and when your emotions are being pinged, that's another big one. It's like,
right.
Why am I being asked to feel angry about this? Or why am I being asked to feel sad about this? It really takes some digging into your own self as well, and listening to your gut.
Exactly. And I can, take that macro view and micro it in a second, which is why I say it's totally fine to talk about both, because to me, a lot of times, like the algorithm, the national news source is actually our own inner critic. It's telling those stories over and over again. It's like, funneling it in a specific direction. And if you think of what you said about that, like diversifying your news source, well, what that means is like my inner critic might be saying this to me, but my friends say that, or my family says this, and so if you broaden out of that, then you realize like, okay, well, my inner critic might be being harsher or meaner or worse to me than, if I ask my friends that same question, it's not going to tell me the same story. And so that's where that median, to me, if we can know that within ourselves, then it's much easier to question it when we're being fed a news story, when we're being fed a narrative from outside of ourselves, if we're used to, identifying with the truth on the inside, as well as being able to, discern when it's not the truth.
Yeah. And we're in just a really weird place right now in the world, with the AI taking off. You really have to kind of double check. It's like, right. Ooh, that's a crazy headline. Who's reporting that? Oh, I've never heard of that news source.
Exactly.
What is that? Go to the About Us section, right? It's like, okay. I don't think I trust these folks.
and we get to do that. That's the thing, is like we get to say, even if it's a credible source and it feels off to us, we get to say that doesn't feel right to me. Like, let me, like the whole, expectation always leads to disappointment. Like, it didn't feel good. It didn't feel true in that first minute, but somebody that was credible was saying it to me. So I got to go take it into my own self and think about it in different ways and wonder why they would say it like that, and mold it, and like not mold it to what I believe, but like break away the parts that felt uncomfortable, tune into the ones that felt true, and like really work it. And I think that especially when it comes to beliefs, inner beliefs, whether it's political beliefs, personal beliefs, moral value structures and standards, like we should be reworking those things in a way that creates healthy space, and looking at them constantly. Like, what I know now is much different from what I knew 5 years ago, is much different from what I knew 20 years ago. And we should evolve with the way that we just, believe the narratives.
Yeah. I've got to go ahead and make a shout out to the Brazen Bells in my documentary. They were living in a culture where, really, like, women were really kind of in a box, right? And they were looking at these structures and saying, that doesn't resonate with me. I am more than just my kitchen, right? And they started sharing their stories, right? And it comes down to like the consciousness raising movement, right? So when women would get together, and they would, one woman would tell her story, and the other women in the room were like, wow, I've had that experience. And I've never heard another woman say she had that experience, right? And so maybe that's part of it too, is in a way we've got this going on, like the social media stuff. More people are telling their stories, right? But there are still a lot of people who are not telling their stories. Right. They're afraid to tell their stories. They think they're alone in this. And, that's part of the community building also, as well as this is the Be Your Soul podcast. So it's connecting to, what is the core truth of my soul? What do I know as a human being in this position, right? And coming together and making change that helps a lot of people.
Exactly. Because if, it's that, not, Papa would say it's not the rock, it's the ripple. So like that one person who decided to tell their story first, or for you asking them to tell their story, like that creates the permission for people to begin to think differently, or to let the things they were thinking differently come out of, the shame space inside of them and into the truth space in their world. And we don't ever know who that first person is going to be or what that first thought is. But, if we know ourselves and it feels true, then we need to be able to let the light touch it in the right ways. So we ask every guest 3 questions. You're used to this. You've heard it 42 times now. What do you think it means to be your soul?
Well, I believe that our souls are created to a basic blueprint. And there are different blueprints for like different soul groups, right? So different soul groups are going to receive divine energy in particular ways. And so I think when you are being your soul, you are living in a way that allows your soul to receive that divine energy fully and without blockage.
I love that.
And
Yay.
so you know it when you're in the flow
Mhm.
and things are not quite so bumpy.
I get that totally. What is one self care practice you do every day to help fuel your energy?
Well, I have a collection of practices that I do in the morning. So I will meditate and journal and try to do a little bit of exercise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's body, mind, spirit, kind of
I was
all
going to
wrapped
say,
up
you'd hit
together.
the trilogy. I love it. It's perfect.
During COVID, I went through the artist's way.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things you do there is you do your 3 pages every morning, which is just kind of like that mind dump. So you can get rid of all the blah, 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 blah going on. And you can kind of clear that and start your day from a freer space.
Yeah, I love the artist way. It's a really beautiful. It's such a beautiful container for that, that process. So, how do you know when you feel centered and balanced in your life?
My body tells me that. I know my body tells me when I'm not centered and balanced because
Mhm.
my shoulders will be all tense, right? Or I'll have a knot in my belly. I get that good feedback from my body.
Mhm. Move back to center. Thank you so much for doing this. This was so amazing. And I'm so grateful for you. And I know that our listeners are grateful for you. It was a joy to have that conversation and have them know who's behind the scenes helping lift this podcast up. And I love you.
I love you too, Sky.
Audrey, thank you so much for stepping out from behind the scenes and into this space with such honesty, clarity, and heart. Your way of holding truth with gentleness, precision, and a deep presence is a gift to this show and to everyone who listens. Thank you for reminding us that we don't have to accept every story we're told, and that the quiet truth within us is always worth listening for. I'm so grateful for the wisdom you brought to this conversation and for the steady, soulful way you help shape Be Your Soul every single day. And thank you, dear listeners, for taking the time to pause with us today. Your willingness to look beyond the surface and listen for the deeper truth within yourself and within others is what makes this space possible. We're so grateful to be on this journey with you.
This episode of Be Your Soul is brought to you by Little Energies, a beautiful collection of chakra-aligned tools designed to help children connect with their emotions, energy, and intuition. Created by Sky Bradshaw, Little Energies makes self-awareness fun and accessible through books, journals, and oracle cards that empower kids to understand their own energy in a simple, engaging way. These tools provide a gentle, supportive way to introduce mindfulness, emotional balance, and energetic boundaries to the little ones in your life. With the Little Energies Bundle Pack, kids can explore their inner world with confidence and curiosity. Give the gift of self-awareness and energetic wellness. Visit littleenergies.com to explore the full collection and bring balance to the next generation.
This is a practice I've found helpful in my own work, and maybe you will too. It's called Whose Story Is This Really? This guided exercise offers you a chance to slow down, reclaim your truth, and release the narratives that were never really yours. It's a way of coming home to what's real, gently, honestly, and with compassion. It's especially useful in those moments when the world feels loud, your mind is spinning, or someone else's voice is trying to take the lead, even when that voice is your own inner critic. This practice helps you reconnect with what's truly yours, your voice, your knowing, your soul's clarity. We all carry stories. Some were handed to us, some we picked up in moments of fear, some we've simply outgrown. But just because a story is familiar doesn't mean it's true. And just because it's loud doesn't mean it gets to stay. This is a practice in discernment, a quiet, honest check in, a way to ask the right questions and begin to recognize what's yours and what's not. Because our stories can be loud, especially the ones shaped by fear, pressure, or old beliefs. But your truth doesn't need to shout to be real. In fact, the key is learning to listen before it has to raise its voice, before it has to push through all the noise just to reach you. When we get quiet and curious, we create space for truth to meet us clearly and gently without having to compete with everything that isn't ours. And if we don't make that space, we risk living inside someone else's narrative, one that keeps us small, disconnected, or stuck. Tuning into your truth is a radical act of self-honoring. It moves you from reactivity to clarity, from confusion to conscious choice. But when you're grounded in what's real, not the fear, not the spin, not the performance, you begin to live in alignment with your soul, not just your story. And that changes everything. Let's take a few moments to get grounded in and begin. Take a deep breath in and a slow breath out. Let your body begin to settle. Let your mind begin to quiet. Let your energy begin to return to you. Now ask yourself gently, what's a story I've been carrying lately? It might be a thought you had on repeat, a belief you've absorbed from social media, family, or fear, a quiet assumption that's been running in the background of your life. Say it to yourself. Let it come forward. Maybe it sounds like, I'm behind. I'm too much. If I say no, I'll lose their love. Whatever it is, just notice it without judgment. Just notice. Now ask, where did this story come from? Did someone say it directly? Did I pick it up through pressure or comparison? Is it something I learned to believe in order to feel safe or accepted? Let yourself be honest here. Now shift inward. Bring your attention to your body. What happens in your body when you say this story out loud? Is there tightness, numbness, heat? Do you feel contraction or expansion? Let your body speak and simply listen. Now take a deep breath and ask, what's the deeper truth beneath this story? Not the fear, not the noise, not the pressure. What does your unclouded heart know to be true? Let that version rise, even if it's just a whisper, even if it's unfamiliar at first. Say it gently. Let it be heard. You might say, I can honor my needs and still be loved. I'm allowed to grow beyond this version of me. I trust the truth that lives within me more than the story I was told. Let that truth settle into your body. Let it anchor you in the present moment. And now, one final question. If I believe this truer story, how might I move differently today? How would I show up? What choices would I make? What energy would I bring to the room? Let that guide you, not just in this moment, but as you walk through your day. Let it remind you that discernment is a daily practice, one that gets easier with time and tenderness. The more you pause to ask, whose story is this, the more fluent you become in the language of your own truth. This isn't about perfection. It's about presence, about learning to trust yourself enough to listen, to question, and to choose again if needed. This practice is a reminder you don't have to carry every story that finds you. You're allowed to release what isn't true. You're allowed to return to yourself again and again. And every time you do, you strengthen the voice that matters most, your own. May this check-in meet you with kindness, clarity, and courage, and may it always lead you home. May you be well. May you find truth. May you be whole. May you feel blessed. And may you always be your soul.
If this practice stirred something in you, maybe a quiet recognition, a softening, or just the sense that you want to go deeper, we invite you to explore more at Be Your Soul. Every Friday, we're offering something new on our YouTube channel. First Fridays, it's rooted and real conversations with past guests. Second Fridays, guided self-care practices. Third Fridays, full podcast episodes. And fourth Fridays, energy and motion meditations, streamed live. It's all designed to meet you where you are, whether you're just beginning or deepening the journey. You can find all our YouTube offerings, podcast episodes, guest information, and the full Be Your Soul classroom at www.beyoursoul.org. When you're ready to expand this journey beyond the episode, we'll be there.